Well, we got ourselves another SX-64 here. What we've got here is the bezel is in nice shape. The keyboard seems to be in nice shape. Haven't tested any of it yet, but I'm told that it has a black screen. So let's get down to it. Turn this guy on. And well, it doesn't exactly have a black screen, but there sure is a lot of polka dots in there. So this is interesting. Okay, let's shut this thing off. Let's go ahead and put the, I'm not going to bother with the dead test cartridge because it's not dead. So I'm going to put it on diag mode here, and let's see what happens with the diag cartridge. So it seems to be taking its sweet time here. Okay, so for kicks, let's put the Kickman cartridge in there and see if we can isolate the, oh, here we go. All right, well that's interesting. So the Kickman cartridge bypasses the ROMs. So I don't know why I didn't run the diag though, unless it got stuck on PLA or memory, because normally that would just give me a garbled screen with a diag. Oh, okay. So the SID chip works, so we're getting a black screen. Interesting. I wonder, yeah. There you go. Needed to turn the contrast up a little bit here. All right, so it's actually going through the motions with the diag. You just can't see it on the screen. All right, so let's go ahead and hit the PLA as usual. Cool that the SID works though. So, all right, you know the routine. So let's take this thing apart. I'm getting old because these things do not seem to be getting any lighter. They seem to be getting heavier every time I have to pick one up. Alrighty. Well, it looks clean, so that's nice. Someone's been in this. The reason I can tell is down here, the cable tie is not properly set. So, okay, so let's get down to this and hit the PLA, and not the PLA, then we hit the kernel. All right. Okay, here's the PLA, and let's go ahead and give this a quick test. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, well, the PLA seems good. So, next in line, I don't know, maybe we'll do the kernel ROM, but it's not that, then it's RAM. Yeah. And I hate RAM because you have to take the board out. Okay, so let's put this PLA back, and then, well, let's put it back in a second. In the meantime, let's go ahead and take the kernel ROM out and test that. Okay, so there's the kernel ROM. See about testing this guy. All right, let's see what we got here. Nope. Kernel ROM's good. All right. RAM. I hate RAM. All right, we're gonna take out this board and go from there. Okay, you've seen enough of my videos on how to do this. To take out this board, the easiest way to do it is to go ahead and pop out these 3 little pins here. What else are we gonna do? Yeah, we gotta slide this guy over, so we have to pop the pin out here as well in order to unplug this card, and then we can pull this thing out. And we gotta unplug all of this stuff. So, all right. Anyways, pain in the butt. I'm just loosening the bottom just to give me a little bit more room. You don't want to lose these guys. Okay, I have to loosen up the bottom a little bit more because there's the power plug that I need to unplug down here. So I took the bottom 2 screws out. That allows me to move this out a little bit. Okay, I popped the power plug out of the bottom here. Can't really see that on the camera. All right. So there's our board. Okay, so I got to put this in circuit mode here. Okay, yeah. So this first one here, right off the bat, is failing. Doesn't mean that it's that one though. I mean, other RAM could be causing these errors. This just gives us a little bit of a hint. See, there we go. Now that's passing. Okay. The contacts have to be really good for this to work right. Okay, so it's not doing well here, but again, it doesn't necessarily have to be the RAM itself. It could be other RAMs causing this. It could be the multiplexer. Okay, so I'm gonna start, I think, by looking at these two, since they're the ones that are showing that they're shorted. And I'll do one of these first, because that could be hindering the other one. So I'll do one of these first, and then I'll do the other one if that doesn't work out. And then maybe even look at the multiplexers. So, all right, stay tuned. I'm going to do some unsoldering here. Be right back. Okay, so we're back, and I have news. So I'd done a previous SX-64 repair video where I was finding the same symptoms as this, where I was getting pin shorts on the RAM chips. And it turns out that the problem was the multiplexers, one of the multiplexers. So I decided, rather than replacing RAM chips left and right, let me replace the multiplexers. And both of them were good. And then rather than starting to unsolder RAM chips left and right and not knowing, you know, realistically where I was going, and I didn't really want to put the scope on because I didn't think the scope was going to help, I realized I'm breaking one of my cardinal rules when it comes to repairs, and that is test all the chips regardless of what the diag test gives me. So one of the chips that I took out and tested, and by that testing all the chips, I mean all the socketed chips, right? Is the VIC, which I really thought the PLA was going to be the issue, and I didn't have a lot of confidence that the VIC would have a problem. But as it so happens, I'm glad that I stopped myself. I should have done this before even unsoldering the multiplexers, but as you can see, there we go. We have a failure on the VIC chip. So I replaced the VIC, and that's where we're at right now. What I'm going to also do while I'm at it here, since I have the board out, is I'm going to take this opportunity to dump these old school Jiffy DOS ROMs. I got in touch with Jim Brain over at Retro Innovations, I think it's called. Anyways, he's the one that has the license for Jiffy DOS, and all the Jiffy DOS chips and bins that you get these days that you're buying from him. So I got into contact with him. He gave me a couple programs where I can dump the kernel and the 1541 ROMs, so I can shoot them, you know, the bins for posterity preservation. And we're both curious to see what the contents, what the DOS contents, the versions that are on here are. And so I'm going to, rather than making the 28 pin to 24 pin converter for the TL866 that I have, I'm just going to use the program to dump them through the computer instead. So anyways, sorry for the ramble. Long story short, I'm going to put these chips in here, and hopefully there's nothing wrong with these chips. I haven't tested them. So we'll get these in here, and then we'll start this up. Okay. All right. Everything looks like it's in good shape now. Since I'm going to turn this around, I'm just going to put the bottom two screws back in here. You can't really see that right since they're out of camera. Okay, I'm not going to connect the keyboard just yet. Let's just make sure this boots up. Yes, there we go. Okay, so it's Jiffy DOS version 4. And flick the switch over here on this Jiffy DOS and see, make sure that goes to regular. And yeah, there it is. Okay, so I'm going to be dumping the contents of the ROMs, both the 1541 and the kernel. But before we do that, just you know, a quick recap. What was wrong, as you saw on the screen, was the VIC chip. So if you see kind of like a screen like that, you know, all funky, the diode cartridge kind of works, the Kickman kind of works, but the screen's all garbly and everything. It's not necessarily RAM, even though we tested the RAM and I showed shorts on those two or four RAM chips. Turns out it's the VIC that was causing those shorts. So anyways, my rule of thumb is usually test all the socketed chips. And if I would have done that to begin with, I wouldn't have been unsoldering the multiplexers. But I got carried away, got overexcited. There you go. So that's what was wrong with this guy, is the VIC. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to dump the ROMs, both the native, well, I'm going to dump the ROMs that are on these 1987 Jiffy DOS chips. So there's two ROMs for each chip. On the 1541, there's the ROM that's native, and then there's a ROM that is with Jiffy DOS. They're probably the same. And then there's the kernel ROM, which is the native one, and the Jiffy DOS one. The Jiffy DOS one, as you saw, is version 4.0. It was put out in 1997 by Mark Fellows. And I'm dumping them because I want to send these to Jim Brain. Jim Brain is the current license holder of Jiffy DOS. If you're buying Jiffy DOS these days, you're probably going to Retro Innovations, and it's version 6, and you know, Jim holds a license for that. So Jim's done so much for the Commodore community throughout the years. Retro Innovations is a store. There's a link in the description. You should visit it. That I thought it would be cool to send him bin files for an OG version of Jiffy DOS that he might not have. And, you know, just even out of curiosity or preservation, you know, just a small little token of a thank you for everything he's done. So once you have these bin files dumped, I'm going to dump them twice. I'm going to dump once with the switch in the native format, and then I'm going to dump it again with the switch in Jiffy DOS. That way you have the full contents of the ROMs that came with this version of Jiffy DOS. And then if you want to burn your own ROMs, once you have those bin files, you'd have to split them up. You'll see why. But I have a TL 8862 burner here. This is also good for testing chips, but the bin files, you know, you can burn your own ROMs using this device, and so at least they'll be preserved. So what I have here is a program that Jim pointed me to when I reached out to him, letting him know I had this version. And this is the original keyboard that came with this computer that we just restored. The membrane needs to be cleaned up or repaired. So there should be two programs on this disk. Sorry for all the banging. That's what happens when you have a weak membrane. Okay, so we're going to do ROM dump. Memory dump is also dumps ROMs from memory, but we're going to do ROM dump here. And again, I'll leave you the link to this. It's not called that natively, but I'll leave you a link to the ROM dumper in the description. So I should have just moved the cursor up, but it's okay. So I can see what keys work on this keyboard that came with this thing. I obviously need to clean up this keyboard. The shift key. Okay. So once this program here loads, so you could always take the ROM chips and read them, you know, on here. And why am I doing that? Not doing that? Well, because these ROM chips are 28 pins. This can't read those. You'd have to have a converter going from the 28 to the 24, and I do have that. But the thing is, if you didn't have it, didn't want to build one, you didn't want to buy one of those little converters, then you can do this with just software. And so that's why I'm going through this little exercise here. Okay, so this tool basically will dump your ROMs, and I'm going to put in a blank disk here. That's where the bin files are going to be written to. and then basically just hit the spacebar a couple of times here. All right, so the first, if you choose one, it'll dump the kernel, but it'll also dump the basic ROM chip contents as well. So you'll get a 16K file. It's 8K, the kernel is 8K, so you're gonna have 8K for the kernel, and then you're gonna have another 8K for the basic ROM. We're gonna actually kill two birds with one stone and do number two. Number two will dump the 1541 ROM, which is 8K, and it'll also dump the kernel ROM, which is 8K. So you'll have a 16K file. You just have to split those two inside the bin file. It's going to be, they're going to be concatenated. So you're going to have to split the two up, okay, in order to have them a separate kernel and a separate 1541. But nonetheless, that's what we're going to run. So when we do that, okay, this will take about, it really will take about 8.5 minutes to run. The first one, if you're just doing the kernel and the basic, it takes just, less than a minute. But in this case, that's what it's doing right now. So it's going through the process. And so we'll come back when this is done and wrap this up. We're going to do this twice. Right now I'm doing it in native, and then I'm going to flip the switch and do the exact same thing in Jiffy DOS. Okay, so it's finished. Basically, we've already done it. It's asking you to insert a disk in there to save the bin files, and hit the space bar, and there you go, saving the file. So we'll take a look real quick at the directory on this disk after it's finished. Note that I'm going to do this again, but I'm going to have the computer turned on in Jiffy DOS mode. You'll want to rename the files on the diskette, because when it writes these files, it writes the files in the same name, and it will overwrite the previous file. So you definitely, if you do this twice for whatever reason, note that it'll overwrite whatever file might already be written from a prior run. Okay, do I want to save it again? No. Okay. Okay, so those were our two files that we had, mem dump and rom dump, but then see how it wrote kernel space 1541. So this holds two ROMs. It holds the kernel ROM, and it holds the 1541 ROM that are currently active. So you'd have to split this file up into two to get the two ROMs out of it. And again, if I run it again with Jiffy DOS, which I intend to get the Jiffy DOS contents of these ROMs, it will overwrite this. So I'm going to rename this and then do this again. So I won't go through the process again. You get it. So if you want to dump ROMs and you don't have a 28-pin, the 24-pin converter for your TL866, this is the program to use. All right. Okay. So we'll be right back and wrap this whole thing up. Stay tuned for the summary. Okay, so I think that'll wrap up this video. You saw the fix, garbled screen. Turned out it was the VIC, and you also learned something from my mistake, I would hope, in that, hey, don't go and start unsoldering chips left and right. Make sure you test all the socketed chips. It's the easiest thing to do. Because if I would have done that, it would save a lot of time, because it was the VIC that was the problem. I love the clearness of the screen, and that just goes to show you, I put a newer VIC-2 chip in to replace the current one, and this screen is really nice and sharp. And then you also saw how to dump ROMs from your kernel, your basic, your 1541, using software. So if you don't have a TL866-2 programmer, you can use software to dump ROMs and then archive them for your preservation purposes. So a little bit of everything in this video. There's a little tiny tidbit even at the end. Called it a Christmas present, because today is Christmas Eve, and it is Christmas time here. And I'm just waiting right now for the snow. Let's hope we get a little bit of Christmas snow here in Oregon. And yeah, So, like I always say, you know, enjoy life. It's been a great year. You only live once. Life is short. You should live every day like it's your last, and be happy. All right. Peace out. Well, if you stuck around this long, I'm going to give you a little extra. So one of the questions I'm usually asked is just how many Commodore SXs do you really have? Because you see a lot of videos that I put out, and they're all these Commodore SXs. And you can see I have a few that are in the pipeline, getting fixed, restored, whatever. Well, keyboards anyways. I don't have a single SX-64 now that's not working. There's that one that I just recently got. There's these 5, which you've seen videos of. They're all working well, they're all in working order. Here's a one of the latest ones I received. Yeah, no, I got a couple more than, you know, the 6 that are in here. Why don't we take a little bit of a walk and see what we got? Okay, well, you can count them up, I guess, if you really wanted to know how many SX64s I have. Obviously, I have a fascination, I don't know what you want to call it, obsession with the SX64s. These are all in working order. They've all been restored. They all have a story to them. But yeah, so now you see how many SX64s I have. I don't regurgitate the same ones in my videos. There's going to be a lot more stuff coming up, you know, video-wise, because it's not just Commodore SXs that I'm after, you know, that I deal with. There's Ataris, there's Amigas, there's, you know, oh, there's a couple more SXs in the boxes up there. You know, but I'm going to clue you in on the next video here, and it has to do with these. So the next video I think I'm going to be putting out is repairing an MSD SD2 drive. They're notorious for leaking capacitors, so I'll show you how that works and the internals and stuff like that. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up. My infatuation for Commodore continues beyond the SX64s. You know, all of these in working order. I should at one day start, you know, selling these off. Have an affinity for the Ultima games, you know, as well, for the Commodore. So, you know, that's always something that I'm always eyeing. And like I said before, it's not just Commodore. You know, I cut my teeth on IBMs. We have a few MSDs, of course, but we have more 64s, a lot of Atari stuff out there. So anyways, this is, believe it or not, just 2 rooms out of quite a few rooms. I also have TRS-80, so anything vintage. So if you got something out there that's kind of weird, whether it works or not, and you know, you don't quite know what to do with it, well then, heck, send it my way. Let's do a video of them. See what's out there besides, you know, your SX64s. I think I'm going to just stop with the SX videos at this point. I think I've pretty much saturated the video world with those. So, all right, there you have it. A bunch of SXs, a bunch of Commodores just in general. So, all right, be good. Have a nice day. Enjoy life. Again, peace out.